Here we are on the second floor at the Barge House, and I'm standing next to Sally Smart in front of her installation, which she made and installed for us specially for this show, Time of Vision. And it grows on a body of work that Sally has produced over a number of years. And rather than me talking about it, I'm going to hand over to the artist herself. But you make these tree installations. I've seen them before. Just tell me about how they come about.
I have one back in 1999 called Family Treehouse. It's a really major work. Actually, it's reproduced in the catalogue, which goes, I think it's something like 3 stories, 11 metres high. So it's a sort of huge, big, hybridised tree, and the idea of the family treehouse simultaneously all in one big piece. But this work I thought I'd amalgamate some of that tree imagery that I've worked before, which sort of takes up really large labyrinthine structures around gallery spaces, and also incorporating a new suite of work which is called In Her Nature, and also ideas around choreography and dance. So this is called Performativity's Tree, but it's also subtitled The Dancing Tree, and it sort of plays off that idea of the tree of life, I guess, as well as that has a sort of darker side as well. And going back to a lot of the imagery from the earlier tree works, but also the hybridised elements, bringing in these sort of natural elements of nature, signs, if you like, signs of life, and then the figures held in the tree.
Can I ask a little bit about materials as well? Because I saw your work at a show at Purdy Hicks about 6 months ago, and there was something about the use of materials which was quite interesting, because I know you've got an interest in feminism, and I also noticed that in some of these things, some of the works that are kind of collaged together, you're actually using fabric, you're using photography, and they're sort of in some of the earlier work it was actually being sewn. Is it stretching a point to say that that's important to you as well in terms of use of fabric and the way that you stitch these things together?
Well, the materiality, I pinned actually, and more often than not the sewing aspect would be more of a sign for sewing rather than a literal sewing.
Yes. I'm
interested in those signs, if you like, of the large scale collage assemblage works generally is the way I work, all in fragments, all these various component pieces, elements I call them, and then they are literally put onto the wall and built, and more often than not staged in the studio, rehearsed, like I did this in my studio. And then when I get into the site, then I start to make, as you saw me going up the ladder, I'm making extensions, being much more site specific. And a lot of the parts are silk screened elements, there's photographic elements, as you say, and then in the end, most of the components are actually pinned directly to the wall. And yes, you're right, the stitching, ideas of, in a way, the feminisation of a lot of these sort of materiality that I use in the work. Also, there are some new elements here too, which are embroidered, and so these are absolutely new. I've just had those made quite recently in Vietnam, and they've been based on interpretations actually of imagery of mine. And then there are sort of some of these figures, the photographic elements, are all from various dance works that I've been working with Peter Bosch and also Martha Graham, a particular work called The Log Dance.
And I noticed as well that there are recurring motifs, and part of your own sort of personal iconography, if I can call it that, the hair, which was also very important in the Pirate series. Can you just maybe expand a bit on that? Yeah,
the hair, and also hair, and more specifically, I think in this body of work, hands and the gesture of hands. Gesture is quite a strong element because it's a way, in terms of body parts, the hand and maybe the legs and feet too, is a way that with very, very simple component parts I can make and construct a lot of dynamic, a lot of movement. And the hair also is sort of there's a lot of facial heads in
Yes,
here. It's
yeah.
actually, I wanted to reduce that down. You start to look too strongly towards personality. I was thinking much more in terms of it being assemblage and much more generic, actually, in its construction of an actual personality, if you like, more often sometimes in a shadow or a silhouette. But the hair is a theme that runs through a lot of the work. It's also, in many ways, that the idea of the hair is stitch as well. So there's a sort of idea of it being part of the fabric of this sort of, not so much in this work, but in other works, where the body parts almost become a sort of visceral part of the inside, outside of the body itself. The human body has a very strong sort of relationship to the making. That's why it's called performativities as well. The whole idea of the constructing the work is a very strong performative process in the actual making of the work, the way I engage with the wall, the way I engage with the elements to construct the piece.
I'm also quite taken to the way that the piece works from a distance and close up. I think as you walk through the space, from the distance you see the image, but when you get closer you start seeing this sort of repetitive layering, so you get things which look, sort of pair of jeans, but is that a pair of jeans the other way around, or is it the branches of a tree? The limbs become parts of trees. How do you work that out? Is that just experience that you go, well, actually, I've done this several times now, I know how these things work?
That's part of my training, I guess, many years ago, was as a painter, so there is quite a strong painterly aspect to the visualisation of these works, but it's a lot of the thinking is when I talk about the rehearsal in the studio. Everything is worked out with an eye to abstraction, figuration. I'm dealing with a picture plane. I'm making things that sort of show deep space, shallow space. I'm under colour. It's very conceptually orientated, and the use of colour is really important in giving a sense of. So everything is really articulated, highly articulated actually, to give weights and distances between things to be able to give that sense. I remember seeing many years ago, it sort of nicely relates back to this work, and also to a small work in the National Gallery of London, and it's the Daphne and Apollo, one of the Daphne and Apollo really early piece. And it's so small, but it's a sort of transformation idea of Daphne. It's a sort of enduring sort of, in the history of art, some metamorphosis that I'm actually interested in. But conceptually, I also like this idea of from a contemporary point of view, this idea of this hybridity of complexity in materiality, to be able to arrange all of these elements in space, in time, and then come up with something that is both visually interesting, both on a very shallow picture space relationship to the wall, and also from a great distance as well. And I think that's that illusion I like working with that.
And final question, which is, I know there's a lot of research that goes on before you do the work, but I was amazed when the work actually arrived here at how spontaneous it seemed to be. It was like you were just throwing it on the wall. I'm sure you were. I was expecting you to almost lay it all out flat and then go, okay, with this bit then. Yeah. It seemed to be, there was still that painterly sort of gestural spontaneity going on. Would that be fair? No. It was all meticulously.
Well, did you see the photographs I had of the plan, the map?
I saw it, but I didn't get the sense that when you were putting these things up there that you were literally going backwards and forwards.
No, I was.
Okay.
I was.
Okay.
But there was a fluidness. You're right, and in a way, that is the rehearsal. That is in the studio. I know these pieces, even though this is completely new work. I know them. And also, you're up on the ladder. You're sort of there are certain strains and tensions, but there are little pieces of white lines in here that are showing me where I'm going as well. But true. That all said, I still then, at the end of the day, I will be responding to the space.
Yeah.
And I like that to be that dynamic aspect to be in the work. Yes.
There was a performative aspect to you. Still,
yes.
I was trying to conceptually round it all up at the end.
Yeah.
And it was quite kind of, it was that last limb, I can remember. Yeah, and it just went up there. So,
Yes, that and a number of the other elements too. So there is a drawing. I mean, it's a very strong drawing practice. So there is a lot of openness that can happen within it, but there's still, sometimes, it depends. Sometimes it's to the centimetre, other times I can keep it open.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.